次の発表、このセッション最後の発表ですね。アンゲリカ・コクさん、ライデン大学の方の発表で、血と涙と武士の愛という素敵なタイトルの発表です。
Okay. First of all, thank you very much to the EAJRS and the organizers for giving me this opportunity today to introduce our new project. As you can see on the slide, the new project is called Blood, Tears, and Samurai Love, a tragic tale from 18th century Japan. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the manuscript that this is based on, and then also about the digital future that we envision for it. And I hope that this might be a resource that some of you might be interested in. Okay, so first of all, here you see the manuscript that our project started from. And as you can see, it's fairly unassuming, right? So it was acquired by Yale's Beinecke Library in 2017. And yeah, it doesn't look that exciting at first glance. It has this simple black cover. It's also fairly small in size, you should know, so only 14 by 19 centimeters, so about that size. It has 22 folios of text and is accompanied by 10 color illustrations, which closely follow the narrative inside. It is now catalogued at Yale under the provisional title Shudo Tsuya Monogatari, or an all-night tale of boys' love. But in fact, it actually lacks both a title slip and any indication of a title inside the book. So this is not the name it might have been known by to contemporary readers, actually. When we go to the colophon, so here you see the colophon, you see that it is dated the spring of Shotoku 4, which is 1714. But we can also get a little glimpse that the contents are apparently top secret, or shimpi. And this already first alerts us to the classified and somewhat risque nature of the work. So we know, okay, this might be something juicy, right? Now, as anyone familiar with the Edo period probably knows, it was by no means the titular concept of shudo, so the love of youth, that would have made the content offensive and secret in early 18th century Japan, because stories of male-male same-sex love actually circulated quite freely in the popular fiction and theater at the time. So why then this rhetoric of secrecy surrounding the manuscript? To discover the reason, we first have to delve into the world of the story. And to do so, I will actually show you an animated video that my postdoc on the project has created, and you will get a bit of a glimpse of what the story is like. It summarizes basically the first half of the manuscript, and hopefully that's a more fun way than me just telling you what it is about. Can we put on the video? Sorry, how do I get to the video now? I embedded it, but the embedding didn't work, so we have to show it from YouTube. Oh, it's just here. Okay, well, that is easy. All right. So now we need to go back to the presentation. Sorry. Anyway, so as you can see, the slide. Next one. Next one. Great. Thank you. Okay, so as you can see, the narrative in the book revolves around a young samurai named Takenamato Genta. This is from the original manuscript illustration. He's a brilliant young man from a respected family, and he attracts the attention of a string of older lovers. His popularity leads to a host of baseless rumors initiated by jealous rivals, obsessive stalking by admirers, and strong resentments. So this then ultimately ends in the tragic murder of Genta at the age of 16, cut down in the street by a jilted lover. Adding to the manuscript sense of mystery, the story is set within a narrative frame. And in this frame, the Bodhisattva Chizo appears as a vision and personally transmits Genta's tale, thus effectively turning the deity into the omniscient narrative voice for the events that unfold. So the story clearly has all the trappings of a riveting read, right? So it has scandal, intrigue, a violent murder, and it could easily have appeared as a melodramatic storyline in popular samurai fiction, only that it was not fiction at all, right? So Takenamato Genta was a real-life samurai, and his murder was an actual event. And it was, of course, the veracity of this account that spelled danger and necessitated the manuscript's covert treatment of the subject matter. As such, the story takes us to a very specific place at a specific time, and it features a set of characters with whom the writer may have been familiar. As I already mentioned, it was written at the beginning of the year Shotoku 14, and at least according to the colophon. And if this is true, it captured the events in writing only about 2 or 3 months after Genta's murder, which was in the 10th month of the preceding year, 1713. The setting is Yonezawa Domain in northwestern Japan, so present-day Yamagata Prefecture. And this was then a relatively small and financially struggling fiefdom of about 150,000 koku, ruled by the Uesugi. The story takes us into a close-knit community of mid-ranking samurai in this northern domain. And they lived, of course, in the castle town of Yonezawa that you see in the map here. And we can even pinpoint the setting more closely to this area here on in the south of the castle, which is where most of the characters that turn up in the story lived, and it is also where the temple, not the temple, where the shrine is that where Chizo transmits the story. So the story is really deeply rooted in this particular social setting and this local community. The cast of characters is very, very large, and this is at times perplexing as a modern reader to follow along. But it also suggests very close familiarity with this local community, and also a certain expectation that any possible readers would have insider interest in that community. Most significantly, perhaps, with its focus on, the at least alleged love affairs surrounding Genta, the manuscript conjures up a lively local samurai culture, or at least an imagined version of it, of same-sex love, basically. And given that most of the contemporary popular fiction about nanshoku, about male same-sex love at the time, encapsulated the urbanite view from the large metropolises, this manuscript also provides a particularly valuable resource for exploring alternative visions beyond the culturally dominant center. here you just see, sorry, this is, forgot to show this. This is just a list of a couple of the characters. The list is much longer, but what you can see, this was done based on the Uesugi records of their retainers, is that all of those characters that turn up are basically placed at the same stratum, at the same level of samurai society, which is this mid-ranking level called the umamawari. Anyways, so now I want to briefly talk about the issue of why precisely the apparent veracity of this story was problematic in early 18th century Japan. Well, it is well known that any form of newsworthy real-life events were a potential target for legislator at that time. So in practice, this meant that some topics were simply off limits for general publication in print. So first and foremost, this of course concerned information about the shogun, the government, its officials, daimyo, and their samurai retainers. At times overlapping with this first category were also publications that shogunal laws disdainfully dubbed rumors, so fusetsu, uwasagoto, strange events, mezurashiki mono, empty words, kyosetsu, kyogen, or baseless, mukon, assertions, and the like. So this essentially means reports and gossip about various scandals that would have attracted popular interest. So if we look at our manuscript, it is very likely that it would have fallen foul of these official regulations on a number of counts. It really checked all the boxes of what the government wouldn't have wanted to see. First of all, of course, the protagonists in the story were almost without exception mid-ranking retainers of the daimyo of Yonezawa domain. They were also clearly identified as such by their kamon crests on their clothing in the illustration. So this you can see here. This is Genta as he's practicing archery, and he's very clearly identified by the janome, so the snake's eye crest, which we can confirm from Yonezawa records as being the crest of the Takenomata family. The family lineages of some of these warriors are also cited in the text, which can sometimes be viewed as offensive if used outside the context of officially sanctioned government and warrior documents. Also, adding insult to injury, the omniscient divine narrator of the manuscript, Chizo, also mostly uses these lineages to reflect on the current decline in warrior standards, and he sometimes caustically comments on the conduct of the Yonezawa retainers. So he repeatedly describes them in highly unflattering terms, such as, quote, men of no consequence, or headless flapping birds, or simply as clueless. Last but not least, there's also some somewhat suggestive scenes in places. But anyway, so it's clear that overall, it's clear that the manuscript was in blatant contravention of shogunal exhortations to refrain from reporting scandalous events and other newsworthy items. And certainly the murder of a domain retainer in broad daylight in the streets of Yonezawa would have qualified as such. Although local Yonezawa practices of publication control are at present completely unclear, there's little doubt that contemporary officials would have taken issue with the text if it had come to their notice. Of course, we know that manuscript is a go-to for all kinds of furtive subject matters in the early modern period, because it was easy for them to evade control mechanisms of censorship that were in place. The strong local color of our Shudo manuscript, also the, as far as I can tell, absence of any print publishing, local print publishing in Yonezawa at that time, and perhaps also the intended private use of the book. All of this may have also impacted the choice of a manuscript format, but first and foremost, it is probably the risque nature of the content that would have made it unsuited for print. As such, our text arguably belongs to a category of true record books, or jitsurokubon, that is illicit manuscripts that were narrating current events and scandals, usually in a semi-fictional mode. Such works covered events of general interest that could not appear in print due to censorship, for example, intrigue and power struggles in powerful warrior houses and the like. They were usually produced for public consumption, in fact, as Peter Konitsky has argued. So some of these handwritten texts really enjoyed a very wide circulation at the time as a staple of lending libraries, and they were copied and recopied by readers and would often accrete further details in the process. If we now look at our manuscript from that angle, now it doesn't want to move on. Can we try? Can you? Oh, okay. So our manuscript, we can say in terms of the contents, it fits the bill. It has love affairs, jealousy, revenge, murder, and the downfall of a not that prominent warrior house. Its author, sorry, can you click again? Its author, as was also typical of true record manuscripts, remains anonymous, and the circulation remains obscure. The book displays no telltale signs of handling by a lending library, and it bears no owner seals that might provide clues to its provenance prior to the arrival at Yale. Its lack of a title also complicates the task of ascertaining the existence of other copies, as does the fact that, of course, true record manuscripts frequently circulated under a number of different titles. There's no matching work listed in the Union Catalogue of Pre-Modern Japanese Books, or in the pioneering biography of pre-modern literature on Nanshoku by Iwata Tunichi. For all we currently know, the Yale copy may be unique, and if the text ever circulated, it most likely did so within the local community where the events unfolded. Okay, so now as I already briefly mentioned, true record books are semi-fictionalized accounts of actual events, and they actually incorporated sensational rumors, embellishments, etc. So some of the fictional elements of the text we can quite easily discern, I think. For instance, the narrative frame that turns Chizo into the narrator, the mouthpiece for Gento's tragic tale, etc. But the question is also, what is the actual core of truth and the seed of factuality from which this story grew, and where do facts end and fiction start? To an extent, it's, I think, important to understand that we have to contend with the fact that the way news and information spread in the early modern period did not always necessarily distinguish between the two. So there might not have been such a distinction in place. So Peter Konitsky has, for example, pointed out in the context of the 17th century disaster account that they often displayed also literary and narrative features, such as anecdotes or humor. Similarly, in the context of 18th century France, a very different context, historian Sarah Mazar has pointed out that readers of trial briefs actually preferred it if they used methods of the themes, languages, and techniques of fiction, basically. So we have to take into account that there might be a discrepancy as well between contemporary and early modern notions of factuality. Nevertheless, if we try and compare our manuscript to, say, the official historical records of Yonezawa domain, what can we learn? Well, we can learn, first of all, that the existence of virtually all the characters in the tale can be confirmed from the domain records. So they were real life figures, and most of them, as I said, belonged to that same stratum of domain society, mid-ranking samurai. So here on the slide, sorry, this does not seem to work very well, but here on the slide, you see on the second one on the left is the entry for Takenomata Ihe. This is a bungencho, so a roster of retainers from 1694. And Takenomata Ihe is Gento's father. And tells us how many koku he got, 100 koku, etc. And these kinds of biographic and official details are actually found with quite a high degree of accuracy in the manuscript. So this is also information you can find in the manuscript. And this would suggest that the compiler of the text had some kind of access or knowledge of that kind of information. The central event, namely the murder that prompted the compilation, can also be ascertained from a range of official domain records and official histories. So the history Yonezawa Shunju, for example, reports that on the first day of the 10th month of Shotoku III, Takenomata Genta and Nagai Sezamon engaged in a private fight. Similarly, the official Uesugi chronicles, tell us that Nagai Sezamon was then beheaded and his family name discontinued for the murder of Takenomata Genta. But none of these matter-of-fact records, which are very much steeped in kind of official and legal jargon, provide any reason for this violent incident. And this is, of course, precisely the point of departure for the manuscript, namely all the speculations, the rumors, the purported truths that culminated in that drastic attack. So it was precisely in that kind of space that was left vacant, say, by official histories, in this gap between official and popular history, that the manuscript would have flourished. So here, by comparison, you see how the same event is described in the Yale manuscript. And we can see that the kind of main text is actually fairly similar to the official accounts. So it uses all the tools of record keeping and officialdom and chronicles. So it provides a precise location, precise names. So, cloaks itself very much in that record-like precision and authority. But at the same time, you can also see that they use interlinear. Sorry, can you move on? It's not working again. That they also provide these small-sized interlinear glosses that are kind of visually already set off from the main text. And this is exactly where rumors and alternative versions, etc., are reproduced. And this is often also marked linguistically by markers such as unun or toyu. So it is said, this is something I have heard. So what this manuscript does really is creating, as I called it, a hierarchy of truths. So in this case, it tells us, all the ominous signs that appeared before the murder. So all the candles went out 3 times the night before he was murdered. That this is what I've heard. This is the rumor, right? But anyway, so just to wrap it up, the way I think we should approach this kind of material is, rather than, only approaching it from the point of view of factuality, which is, of course, also one angle and needs to be done, is important historical work that needs to be done. But we shouldn't only attempt to separate out the kind of chaff of bad history from the good history, but also kind of embrace the hybrid nature of these texts. So I believe that they have a valuable story to tell about popular sentiment and emotional responses surrounding true events like this one. And these are facets that official histories are really not capturing by their very own nature. But anyways, I'm going to stop talking about the manuscript now, and I'm going to show you what we intend to do with it a little bit. So we have, I should first of all say that this is a collaborative project. So it's been happening between Leiden University, which is led by me, and Yale University, particularly the resource specialists there, Haruko Nakamura and Masato Takenouchi, who cannot be here today, unfortunately. And we have also partnered with a new initiative called Japan Past and Present, or JPP. And Paula is heads of operations for that. And we want to introduce briefly what we will, maybe we can show the JPP homepage now. And I know my speaking time is up, but let's pretend that people ask, what is the future, what is the online project like? So this is the JPP homepage, and before you ask, it is not yet online, but it will be a new digital hub, which will have many useful tools that I cannot introduce now, but it will have a translation database. It will have Japan Scholar Search, library resources, publication information, all sorts of things. But one of the things they do is also, or they intend to do is also online projects, right? And our project, sorry, can you move? It doesn't seem to work. Our project would be one of the projects on that site. And this is kind of the early version. If we can go to the introduction. So what things are we trying to do? First of all, we're trying to make it accessible to both scholars and also more general educators, also students, etc. So we've written introduction essays, image forward introduction essays on certain topics like Nanshoku in the Edo period, introducing the manuscript, also a little bit about what is a Chitsurokubon and these kinds of things. Then we also have resources. So we have a map, obviously a historical map. We have reading lists on male-male love. So if you want to use it in your courses, you can integrate it. We will have a course syllabus as well that can integrate the source. And of course, the main piece of what we're trying to do is a digital edition. So we will have an online scholarly edition with where you can see the kind of the original text and image, then with a honkoku, a modern Japanese translation, an English translation, and English annotations. And here, finally, you see all the team that has been working on this. So as I said, the specialists from Yale and also grad students from Yale have been on this project. And if you have any online projects that you would like to, conduct in the future, then please come and talk to Paula and me, because JPP is interested in hosting similar projects in the future. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from venue? No. Oh. Okay. So thanks.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. A quick question regarding the hierarchies of truth that you describe at the end, and it's a two-part question. First of all, is the text consistent? Are these small characters used for all the kind of gossip, or is there, gossip that is not in that format? And second, is it peculiar and particular to that specific manuscript, or have you seen similar uses of this layout or other layouts, but that text or jitsuku where gossips are separated in a way or another from the story of the text? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I think the manuscript is fairly consistent in that. So it really mostly uses notes to kind of provide another version. So sometimes these are really silly ones. So, one of them is something like, oh, he cut down a pine tree, and then the interlinear gloss, or the smaller piece, then says, according to another version, it was a whatever, like a cedar tree, right? So sometimes they're quite silly, but they're mostly used in that way, indeed. So it's fairly consistent. Some kind of rumors turn up in the main text, but relatively, I would say. The other question about is that like a general technique? I do not know. I have not looked into that, but it would be very interesting to know. Although I don't think that is the case. And yeah, so and also in terms of, I have not found anything in the official records. So the official records are all kind of focused on the murder, and you don't really hear anything. So I haven't found any court records or anything that tell us, like a sentence or something like this that was handed down by the government, where you would find statements. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to exist, or at least I haven't found it. So it's unclear whether this explanation that is given in the manuscript is any, but anyways, that's beside the point you asked.
Okay, we take one more question. This is the last question.
First off, thank you. This is really exciting. I've been hearing about it for, it feels like a couple of years maybe. So it's really exciting to see all the work that's gone into this, and it seems like it'll be a great resource. Unfortunately, I think there's some states in the US where teachers are not going to be able to use it, but there's nothing you can do about that. I was just curious where the Beinecke acquired the manuscript from, how they acquired it, because I know you said there was no indication of provenance. So where did they get it from?
They acquired it from a US seller, something Bunko, but he's based in the US. Haruko has made a video about it, so his name is mentioned there. And we did ask him, and he said he got it at internet auction, so he does not know the identity of the original seller. That is his version. Whether if so, or he might not want to disclose it, but in any case, it's unclear. And it doesn't have any ownership seals or anything, so we don't know where it came from. It hasn't, to my knowledge, so I was in Yonezawa this summer, hasn't been discovered by local historians there or anything. Yeah, so I am clueless. If someone has an idea I've been in touch with the Uesugi Museum and the Yonezawa Library, who have the local specialists, and they have not been able to provide any clues so far. So
intriguing. Thank you.
So, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Koch-san. And this is the last session of the session 4, and we have a break now. 11時まで休憩です。お疲れ様でした。